Terrible tragedy has befallen the people of Minnesota, especially the family and friends of Philando Castile, and I express, on behalf of all decent-minded Minnesotans, which is just about everyone, our deepest condolences, our shock and our horror at what transpired last night. All the facts aren't known, but from evidence that's been presented, the video that was taken, nobody should be shot and killed in Minnesota for a traffic tail light being out of function. Nobody should be shot and killed while they're seated still in their car without a very, very different kind of response. So I'm heartbroken for Minnesota because I've heard in the last few hours from very distinguished African American men and women who have recounted to me how they've been pulled over, singled out, and treated very differently because of their race from how white Minnesotans expect to be covered. Would this have happened if those passengers, the driver and the passenger, were white? I don't think it would have. So I'm forced to confront, and I think all of us in Minnesota are forced to confront, that this kind of racism exists, and that it's incumbent upon all of us to vow that we're going to do whatever we can to see that it doesn't happen, it doesn't continue to happen. I met with I talked with the White House Chief of Staff, Dennis McDonough. I just finished talking with Special Assistant Valerie Jarrett, who called to express the President's personal concern and see if they could do to help. I've talked with the Assistant Attorney General, U.S. Attorney General, Vinita Gupta, on 3 occasions. I've talked about their involvement. Their role is not to be the primary conductor of the investigation. That will reside with the BCA, but they will be closely monitoring and providing whatever assistance is desired and necessary. The BCA under Commissioner Dolman is following through with the greatest sense of urgency, time urgency, to pursue this and conduct a complete and thorough investigation, turn that investigation over to the Ramsey County attorney, who will make his decisions accordingly. I've talked with Senator Franken, Senator Klobuchar, Representative McCollum, Representative Ellison, 5 of us, Lieutenant Governor, 6 of us had a conference call just a short while ago. We're drafting a letter that will sign jointly and that will go to the Attorney General, U.S. Attorney General, asking for this investigation or participation on behalf of the Department of Justice and the federal government in this matter. I can't say how seriously I take this. I can't say how shocked I am and how deeply, deeply offended that this would occur in Minnesota to somebody who got pulled over for a taillight being out of order, and how totally unacceptable it is by all the standards and values that I hold dear and that I treasure about this state, that such a terrible incident could occur and did occur, and this life is irrevocably taken away. So when I met with some of the people who are gathered outside the governor's residence earlier today, they said that they wanted justice, and I will vow that they will receive justice. And I don't know what course that takes. That will depend upon all the facts and circumstances, but that justice will be served. Justice must be served in this instance if we're going to have a chance to repair the terrible damage that's been done to the relationships we all have with men and women of other races and creeds. And I will do everything I can to see that it comes about. Commissioner, you want to add anything? Commissioner? No? So on to questions.
Governor, your statement today seems much stronger than it was during Jamar Clark. Can you outline what you see kind of in the framework of what we see in the video? What is so outraged today that we did not hear during Jamar Clark? Today you were saying that you believe there's a racial component to this. I did not hear you say
Well, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go back into that. But I'll just say what I saw in the video. The video was, I told woman Diamond just how extraordinary I thought her poise and presence was to both make that recording, the way she responded to the police in that situation. And I mean that presented a very. It didn't show obviously the incident itself occurring, the shooting of the weapon, but it showed the immediate aftermath of that. And then she recounted in the press that we had this morning at the in front of the residents that, that Philando was not given first aid. Nobody attended to his condition as they were attending to the condition of the police officer who did the shooting. She was handcuffed and taken to police station with her four-year-old daughter. I mean, it's just the stark treatment. I find it absolutely appalling at all levels.
Governor, do you agree with President Obama? He issued a statement today saying that he believes that this is not an isolated act, but rather part of a systemic problem plaguing law enforcement. I mean, your statement today seems to suggest that you also somewhat agree with them. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that statement and whether you would agree that there are similar problems here in Minnesota.
Well, I think we've had these incidents now that prove that these problems do exist in Minnesota. The vast majority of our law enforcement officers, of all colors, races, creeds, religions, are dedicated, and they confront difficult situations every day and every night, and they conduct themselves lawfully and honorably. And one terrible misjudgment or failure of proper action, whatever it turned out to be, could not be allowed to cast aspersions on every other law enforcement officer in Minnesota. But in this instance, again, I don't have all the facts and evidence. I'm not passing a final judgment, but there's every indication in this case that the police response was way in excess of what the situation called for. Certainly being pulled over with a traffic light defect, and not having even exited the vehicle, much less taken any action that could be visibly seen or construed as being an act by the victim of aggression against the police officer, and then to be shot in the car with 4 or 5 bullets is just it's just beyond the pale. It's just so far beyond the pale. I think, it's more than an isolated instance, and that's why, as I said before, there are others who have shared with me just even this today. So, one of the ways in which we we can't ever remedy the situation, but try to move forward with it would be to look at the training, the community policing. That's President Obama in his statement referenced his task force he established on community policing a couple of years ago and their recommendations. I asked for a copy to review those recommendations, and looked very seriously at convening a similar task force or group to look at those issues on behalf of Minnesota. But that's premature. That's not why I'm here today. We don't have solutions today. We have a recognition of a serious problem and a terrible tragedy, and a resolve that I want everyone to know that we are going to pursue this matter all the way to conclusion.
Governor, can you elaborate on the BCA's process, what has been done so far, and what else needs to be done?
I'll let Commissioner Doman, who's in charge of the BCA.
For the record, my name is Mona Doman, the Commissioner of Public Safety, and I oversee the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Last night, the St. Anthony interim police chief contacted the BCA and requested that the BCA conduct the independent investigation of this officer-involved shooting. Agents were sent out to the scene to begin the investigation, and they have been working through the night and through the day to collect all of the evidence, to do a thorough and expedited investigation. I've talked with the superintendent several times today, and we have had discussions with the Lieutenant Governor and with the Governor regarding the need for expediency but thoroughness in collecting all of the evidence, putting that evidence together, and then presenting that to the county attorney for review.
Can you elaborate on that? Does that include any, what sort of camera footage, if possible,
Because it's an ongoing and active investigation, that is not public information, and I can't disclose that at this time. And I don't have all the facts. I have not been to the scene. I have not reviewed any of the evidence.
Commissioner, could you confirm whether he did in fact have a permit, Mr. Castile, whether he did in fact have a permit to carry as the family has said? And if you can't confirm that because it's part of the ongoing investigation, can you explain, because a lot of that information is not public for various reasons, but with the officers on their MPT, on their mobile display terminal, would they have known whether the driver of that vehicle, whether he would have had a permit to carry?
What I can say is that the information that the sheriff's offices hold across the state of Minnesota, because they are the ones that issue the permits to carry, and then we have that information at the BCA, that information is not public information under the data privacy laws, and it is part of the investigation. I do not know what the officers knew when he stopped the vehicle. I don't know what he knew at that time, and it also would depend on who the vehicle registered to and who the driver was. So I
And have they
don't.
been interviewed yet? Have the officers on scene there last night been at least preliminarily interviewed at this point?
It is my understanding that the agents were working on that, to do that this afternoon. I don't know if that interview or those interviews have been conducted at this point in time.
Commissioner, what has been done since the Clark shooting to prevent situations like this? And do you already have plans in place to, for instance, more education or whatever you might do? Can you go into that a little bit?
I can say that from speaking with police chiefs and sheriffs across the state of Minnesota, that they all take these situations very seriously, and training in their agencies is a priority for them. I can't speak specifically to what each individual agency has done or not, but there probably isn't a chief law enforcement officer in the state that isn't paying attention and considering policy or writing policy, drafting policy to make sure that their officers are properly trained and properly responding and properly building relationships, solidifying relationships in the communities that they serve.
Can you speak to where the gun was recovered from the scene, where Mr. Castillo's gun was found?
That is all part of the active investigation. I cannot.
Can you speak to how this being broadcast Facebook Live, how that affects your investigation and even just your reaction to that, knowing you'll get called in?
Well, I think public opinion is different because the public has seen that video. And I would say that it is part of the investigation and part of the evidence that will be collected by the Bureau. And the agents will review all of the information that they have, document it all, and then it will be presented to the county attorney, John Choi's office, for review without recommendation from the BCA. So our job is to collect the evidence and present it for review by the prosecuting attorney.
Commissioner, can you confirm what the original purpose of the traffic stop was? Obviously, Castillo's girlfriend had said in that video that it was for a busted taillight. Is that the case?
I cannot confirm that.
Governor, this video obviously does not show the moment that Mr. Castillo is reaching for his wallet or anything that happens before the shoot. We obviously don't know that. I can hear the police, you said there was no known act of aggression by Mr. Castillo. That was your comment a few minutes ago. I can hear the police union in back of my head saying, well, how do we know that? I ask you, are you prejudging this based on the aftermath that you've seen in the video? And do you believe that unfairly is establishing the framework with which we go forward in the public discussion of this?
Well, I said it at the outset, I don't know if there is any footage. I've not seen anything that relates to the incident before that video began. I'm expressing a view based on the information I have at this point. That's why, as Commissioner Domas said, a thorough, complete investigation is underway and needs to be completed, and all the facts need to be brought to light. I'm responding, just what, 16 hours after, 18 hours after this terrible tragedy occurred, but it is a terrible tragedy, and my feelings about it and my sense of outrage for what occurred is very real, and that if that needs to be modified based on further information, I'll modify it. But at this point, this is how I assess it, and this is what I believe.
Governor, it's been said that words are hollow, and people want to know what direct action are you prepared to take? And also, you mentioned that this was a low-impact stop. What actions are you prepared to take to reduce the number of traffic stops when it comes to people of color?
Well, in In this instance, again, in a very short period of time, we've contacted the White House Chief of Staff, Special Assistant at the White House, the Assistant U.S. Attorney General, spoken with her 3 times, spoke with Senator Franken, Senator Klobuchar, Representative Ellison, Representative McCollum. We've drafted a letter with the Lieutenant Governor signing, and with the 4 of them sending to the Attorney General, U.S. Attorney General, asking for their full involvement, and we will continue to pursue that, which I think is the most immediate first step that can be and must be taken to assure that this gets the maximum scrutiny possible from, and I know it will occur from the BCA because the Commissioner's given me that assurance, but also the federal government, and that all of federal and state investigative capabilities are brought to bear on this situation. I don't have an answer for you beyond that. I think that, as you said, the training, and I don't know what training occurs or not, but that is certainly part of it, because it's still going to be a human face-to-face interaction that's going to occur out there on the street or in a car or whatever. And so the better training and better understanding of those dynamics is something that I intend to pursue. I'll have more information. I mean, I have more information. I can't. You're asking me to compare what I said before. You have to play it back for me.
Information that we don't have?
No, just the chance I had to hear what has been said and to process the information and have a chance to think about it, to have a chance to piece it together.
Governor, was it low that the DOJ kind of has taken a secondary role, at least their response seems to be? I think they got immediately involved in Baton Rouge. They seem to be taking a step back on this one. Was that a blow to you? And 2, do you think this officer should be in jail today?
I'm not going to comment on the second. I think that's what's important is that justice be served, and it's going to take a little time to do that. We're not vigilantes in this day and age. We don't just corral people and deny them due process and put them in prison or worse. This is a lawful society, and even in instances like this, it's incumbent upon all of us, especially those of us in positions of public responsibility, to conduct ourselves in accordance with the law, state of law. As the Commissioner said, respecting the rights to privacy and the like. So I'm not in position to say regarding that. But, what was the first part?
It's just about the DOJ.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, this I'm told is, and the Assistant U.S. Attorney General emphasized this, that this is their usual role. If there's, and I'm not going to get into Louisiana because I'm not familiar enough, but there are circumstances there that cause them, I'm told, read additional concern, or sufficient concern about the ability there to conduct a thorough and impartial investigation, that they felt they had to step in immediately. To Minnesota's credit, they don't believe that's the case here. I can't put words in their mouth, but I mean, the BCA is the proper lead investigative agency, and again, the Department of Justice, and we talked to the U.S. Attorney, Mr. Lugar, and we're going to make sure that they're following very closely. If they think that there are lapses or they think there are gaps, we'll enlist them to work to fill those in.
Governor, you talked about the BCA just now. There are critics out there who say the BCA is a biased organization, shouldn't be leading this investigation, and would like to see the State Attorney General's office do something. What's your reaction to that, and is that even possible for the State Attorney General?
I'd have to talk to the Attorney General. I don't know what qualifications her office has. I don't mean that pejoratively. I just don't know that they have this kind of investigative capability. I mean, I believe we have a highly professional Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. As the Commissioner said, their job is to uncover and present all the facts. They don't make a judgment as to whether something should be prosecuted or not, or if so, how or not. They present the facts to the county attorney, and that's the separation that exists. I believe that they're well qualified, capable, and they know that this is an absolutely urgent situation when they're giving their highest priority. And again, I believe they can be relied upon to do the very utmost to bring all the facts and relevant information to bear and to light and then to present that to the county attorney.
Piggybacking this gentleman's second question, can you maybe say, sir, this officer being in jail, there are so many people that get frustrated that these officers aren't, they're going home on paid leave, they're not in jail after committing a shooting, that wouldn't happen to a regular citizen, not just here, around the country. What's your response to that?
Because that's the law of the state of Minnesota. The laws were put in place, and then the contracts that are negotiated between police officers and the city government. I mean, we follow the law. We follow the law because that's the way it holds our society together. And you can't say, this is an exception to that. We're not going to follow the law. We're following the law.
Governor, are you prepared to
Can you name
support
the
any?
officer who's involved in this and whether he has yet made a statement and any sense that you have of what's caused him to fire?
I cannot name the officer, but I can assure you that we are working to conduct the interview with the officer this afternoon. I don't know if that has been completed yet. And once we have completed that interview and taken that statement, we'll release the name of the officer and any other public information that goes along with what we know at the time. I am not aware of anything at this point in time.
Commissioner, are you going to push for an investigation to be a little speedier than what we've seen in the past? I mean, the Jamar Clark case took months and months, and there's people out there that want something done right away. Are you going to push for this to go a little faster?
I have asked the Superintendent Drew Evans to make sure that this is the highest priority in their agency at this point in time, and they will abide by that. They understand that. At the same time, we also understand that the most important thing is the integrity of the case, the thoroughness of the case, and then in addition to the expediency of getting our package put together so that the county attorney can review all of the information that we have uncovered and collected.
Are you going to use the Facebook video in the investigation?
It would be premature of me to tell you or to comment on that at this point in time.
Governor, are you prepared to support any legislative efforts? At the last legislative session, there were a couple bills introduced on police reform, introduced by Senator Scott Dibble. And speaking with some legislators today, they said that they would like to do that next year. Are you prepared to support anything by the legislature on this topic?
I haven't given that consideration today. I'm certainly open to looking at whatever deficiencies, defects, or this matter brings to light and talk with legislators about addressing those next year. I don't have anything specific to offer today.
Governor, many African Americans say they don't feel safe in this state when it comes to their involvement with police. Are we looking at a public safety crisis when it comes to police interactions with African Americans? And what are you prepared to do?
Well, I'm not an African American, so I can't comment on how people feel, but I've been told by, as I said, very respectable African American leaders that they understand how this dynamic goes on beyond what happened last night, and to the extent that anyone is treated differently because of their race or religion or creed, that's a violation of state law. It's a violation of the values of this society, and it's something that I will do everything I possibly can to eradicate.
Governor, do you have any meetings set up with the White House with, why did you decide to go directly to the White House today with possible federal investigation?
Well, the urgency of the situation and the fact that we wanted, and I called Chief McDonough 9 o'clock this morning, and he took my call immediately. He was already well aware of it, and they picked up on this right away. And again, Ms. Jarrett called to express on behalf of the president his personal concern. That he put out a statement very swiftly. So they recognize the importance of the extreme importance of these matters and the urgency with which they attend.
That's why you turned to the White House as opposed to the DOJ.
Well, I started with the White House. I didn't have direct contact. I don't know the Attorney General. I do know Mr. McDonough and Ms. Jarrett. So I started with people I knew, and they pointed out, and it's important to say, that there's this separation between the White House and the Department of Justice. So they, referred the matter through their proper channels through their attorney. But our dealings with the Justice Department have been totally separate and from talking to those White House officials.
Commissioner, can you mention standing for the officer's name? Can you confirm the officer's race?
I I am really not at liberty to comment at all on the officer involved.
Commissioner, as a longtime chief of police, can you speak to some of the protocols for an officer rendering first aid after, there's apparently no threat? The man in the video was laying motionless for probably at least 5 minutes, and Diamond Reynolds said earlier today that it was about 15 minutes before paramedics arrived and delivered aid.
What I don't know at this time, and so I can't comment, is who called for paramedics to respond and when that call came in. I just don't have that information. I know that, I feel that it should be instinctual that we would render first aid to anyone. Any one of us should do that to anyone in need. But I also understand that we don't have all of the facts of what the officers were going through at the time, what the woman in the car was going through, the emotions that she was dealing with at the time, and then the responding officers and the paramedics that responded as well. And so it really would be premature for me to comment on the timeline or on the timeline and when the calls were made.
Is part of an officer's training, though, to provide some form of aid as needed once a threat has been neutralized?
All officers in the state of Minnesota have to have first aid, first responder training, and so that is part of the training.
Commissioner, 221,000 Minnesotans have permits to carry. They may be in cars driving around right now, and they may be stopped by police. Under state law, there's no requirement to tell an officer you have a weapon on you. It's not required under state law. Do you think that should change? And what do you recommend for police in terms of asking? Should they ask everyone when they come up to the car, do you have a permit to carry? Do you have a weapon on you? And should people on their own, I know in training for permits to carry, a lot of trainers say, hey, put your hands on the dash and tell the officer right off the bat that you have a permit to carry. So my question to you, as a longtime police chief, do you have a problem with the way the law is written now, and do you have any advice to those 221,000 Minnesotans who may have a permit to carry?
I think that it's a policy decision that the legislature needs to have discussion about, and I would be happy to engage in conversations with legislative leaders and legislators across the state regarding that question. And I also understand that every person who has applied for an application or who has applied for a permit to carry and has been granted has the right to have that to carry when he or she wants to carry and where he or she wants to carry within the confines of the law.